Let's bring in our think tank. They might have a better description for us. Joining us tonight, ladies and gentlemen, there he is, Josh Schiffer, great criminal defense attorney, with us. Fallon Stokes, another great criminal defense attorney, and Monica Lindstrom, great criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, with us as well. Great to have everyone here. Monica, do you think there's more at play here? Do you think that everyone that is wondering, how did this whole organization exist? And is there an organization? Will we find out more?
I really think we're going to find out more. Maybe not as much as we want, but here's what I think. If she is really facing all this evidence and time in prison for the rest of her life, and she has everybody in the palm of her hand, she has names, she has dates, she has places, then I would think she would roll over, because why would you want to go to prison for all these disgusting individuals, right? And by the way, let me say that she is the most disgusting out of everyone, because as a woman, she lured other little women to this, and that is just unforgivable. So I do think there's more out there. I think that she's going to give more information unless someone gets to her first. That's the conspiracy theory, right? That someone, I don't know, maybe a past president or maybe other politicians might find her first so that she doesn't say anything, so to speak.
Josh Schiffer, this story is important because it was done out in the open, and this billionaire got away with things and ruined lives. He'll never be prosecuted for it, but there were other people associated. How big of a fish is Ghislaine Maxwell versus other potential people that are out there? Are they bigger fish than her or smaller?
Well, I think everybody's familiar with exactly the most prominent names at a minimum, but even some of the more obscure names that have been brought up in this investigation. She's a big fish because of the information she has. And in an ideal world for her defense, she is going to end up getting protected, getting some benefit for that information in regards to the criminal prosecution and maybe even civil actions against her. And that's going to lead to the huge fish. Or is it not going to lead to the huge fish? Are the huge fish going to be able to avoid exposure once again?
Let's take a listen to Maria Farmer, because she's a Epstein survivor, and her perspective is so important in all of this. Let's take a listen.
As an Epstein survivor, this day represents a new beginning. This is the beginning of justice, which we survivors have been seeking for decades. The lawyers have given us a voice when no one would hear our lonely cries. This day represents hope, freedom from fear, and a renewed faith in the justice system. I have waited 25 years for this day. The victory is sweet. 25 years ago, when I made my report to the FBI concerning Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, I believed justice would be swift. Justice has been anything but swift. Yet I feel that with the arrest of Maxwell, the world is going to be a safer place.
Fallon Stokes, let's talk about that word justice, because that's the job prosecutors have to do. But is it justice in this case to give a deal to Ghislaine Maxwell to get other names? Would it be justice to have her not serve time in prison in exchange for other names? Or is justice prosecuting this woman for what she did and sentencing her to the maximum that she could face?
I think it just really depends. In these circumstances, you have the big fish, Jeffrey Epstein, who's deceased. He's no longer here to be prosecuted. But then you have Ghislaine, who's still here, Maxwell, who's still here and present, who they have a case against, but they still need other evidence to get other individuals who were involved. I mean, this was an ongoing system or trafficking organization for 25 years, where a lot of young girls were trafficked through that time. So it's going to be so important for them to try and get as much out of Maxwell that they can. I mean, it is justice in prosecuting her if she is guilty. I mean, you're innocent until proven guilty. But in these circumstances, they need to get as much information to get justice for these victims in order to have a good case if there were other individuals involved, so they can also prosecute those individuals as well.
And Vinny,
All right, we're going
there
to talk
is
more
no
about the story
way.
at the end. Go ahead.
Vinny, there is no way that these other people that were involved in this are all done, meaning they haven't done this up until this point, or they're still doing it. So even though Epstein was the big fish, so to speak, and Maxwell is a big fish, you've got lots of others out there, and I would put money on it. I would put my profession on it that those individuals that were part of this are still doing it. So justice is not only getting her behind bars, but every single one of those other people.
And I think they're actually getting
We're
more
going to talk more
efficient
about
at
this.
it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. Last word on it, Josh. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think they're actually getting more efficient at it.
Yeah.
This exposed this underworld, which is apparently widely spread. It involved the support of huge infrastructure here and all over the world. And you know, conspiracy theories are what they are, but there's a grain of truth in them. I think that these big fish, the ones who are clearly participating in this regularly, I think they're going to keep getting away with it.
Yeah, possible.
All right, we're going to talk more about the story at the end of the hour. We're going to talk about the issue of, okay, Ghislaine Maxwell, because her attorneys filed papers trying to get her out on bail. Everyone's wondering, will she survive? Epstein didn't survive. Is she safer in jail or out on bail? You can go to my Facebook page, Vinny Politan, Court TV. Let me know what you think. We'll take a look at that at the end of the hour. When we come back, talking about justice, how about justice for the accusers of Harvey Weinstein, whose criminal cases were outside of the statute of limitations? Well, they may be getting their slice of justice through a big civil settlement. We'll talk about that next. These are the last images of Harvey Weinstein on the outside. He's locked up. He's a convicted rapist now, but day in and day out, over the course of a couple months, we watched him in New York City struggle and make his way into the courtroom before the jury convicted him and the judge sentenced him, and he is locked up now. But that's not the end for the accusers in the case, because there's a whole bunch of accusers whose cases will never be heard in a criminal court because of the statute of limitations. But there is a class action civil suit against Harvey Weinstein and his company, and it's really against his company, by the way. And that thing is about to wrap up, maybe. And you know, a civil case ultimately is about damages and money. It's not about sending someone to prison, but it's also about a sense of justice for someone. You know, when you've been victimized, you want a sense of justice at the end of the day. And this civil settlement may mean that for some of the accusers. Chanley Painter takes a look at it.
4 months after former movie mogul Harvey Weinstein walked into a courthouse in New York, and a jury delivered a verdict that many saw as a stunning victory for the Me Too movement.
Breaking news in the Harvey Weinstein case. Today, on day number 5 of juror deliberations, the jury has reached a verdict. They found Harvey Weinstein guilty.
The verdict still seems surreal for those who accused Weinstein of violating them but were not part of the criminal case against him.
The fact that he was found guilty was such an incredible thing. It moved me so much. I wasn't expecting it. It felt like a new beginning, and it felt as we're finally on the path to seeing justice.
Obviously, all of us were so incredibly grateful to the women in the criminal case, and I mean, really what they did raised the bar 110-fold. So, you know, and really I too was shocked by the conviction, and so happy that, you know, we finally got to a place where we were as a society truly able to put a predator away, even though he was as famous as he was.
Caitlin Donnelly and Louisette Geis are two of the 9 women on the verge of closing a different chapter in the long-fought legal battle against Harvey Weinstein and what remains of the Weinstein Company. They are plaintiffs in a class action lawsuit. Their attorney, along with the Attorney General of New York, recently announced a nearly $19 million settlement agreement with the board of Weinstein's former studio on their behalf.
Each of them met Harvey Weinstein in the context of their role as either an actress in Hollywood or in pitching business to him as a producer. All of them met him in the context of work. But in the context of that, each of them were either subjected to rape, to masturbation, and to unwanted sexual contact.
I actually found out about the class action back in 2017. Known many of the other survivors and wanted all of us to be involved in this because the truth of the matter is there was nothing really else for us to do at that point because we were all out without the statute of limitations at that time. So this was really like our one way of standing up is to do this civil case.
Lead attorney Beth Fagan is standing with the 9 and negotiated the pending settlement. Fagan tells Court TV if this agreement is approved by federal court judges, other women who meet certain criteria will also have the opportunity to file a claim through a newly created victims fund.
The goal here is not just for these 9 women, but for all women who were abused by Harvey Weinstein from the 1980s all the way through 2017 to be able to make a claim into the settlement. It's a confidential process. No one else outside of a court-appointed neutral will see their claims.
Fagan says victims or survivors could receive between $7,500 and $150,000 by submitting a written statement. The payment could be as much as $750,000 if the victim does an interview or has supporting documents.
This is one of the worst proposed civil settlements I've ever seen, and there's a number of reasons for that. First of all, this civil settlement, if it were approved, is actually going to give more money to the defendant directors, the people we accuse of wrongdoing, the people who were the directors of the Weinstein Company, who we allege knew about Harvey Weinstein's conduct. Harvey Weinstein isn't paying a penny in the settlement, neither is Bob Weinstein. They're getting off scot-free.
Attorney Doug Wigdor also represents some of Weinstein's accusers. He says the deal hurts those who want to pursue an individual lawsuit.
The women who don't want to participate in it, who want to confront Harvey Weinstein and have their day in court and have their trial, they are going to try and bind them by giving releases, legal releases to the insurance companies and to the directors. So that way they can only go after Harvey Weinstein, who may declare bankruptcy, and they'll be unable to collect from the insurance companies or the other directors.
For Caitlin Donnelly and Louisette Geis, they say the money cannot make amends for the pain they say Harvey Weinstein caused them or their peers, but they hope it sends a message.
It's something that everyone that makes a claim will have something to hold on to say, this happened for me. There's justice in this for me. It's pretty incredible that so many of us spoke out and found one another and were able to accomplish this.
And that's another part of this, is will this create some sense of deterrence to the enablers, those companies that cover up and allow someone like Harvey Weinstein to do what he did and continue to do it? Let's bring back in the think tank Fallon Stokes. Do you think a case like this, high profile, big numbers, may deter this type of conduct? And when I say conduct, the enabling conduct from these companies that allow people to do this?
Well, I don't think it really will. I mean, at the same time, when you have this settlement, again, Harvey Weinstein's not being held accountable personally, financially, to pay any of this money in the settlement. It's just going against his company. So even though his company for years enabled this type of behavior, they knew about it, it was reported, and they just ignored it, or more like swept it under the rug for more than around 37 years. It's just important to remember that this can be a bit of a deterrent, but I don't think it will be to the extent as when you personally are able to go after the individual. These victims will have some solace on the fact that Harvey Weinstein did receive 23 years in prison, and he may not be released anytime soon. He may very well die in prison. But again, for the people who are outside of the statute of limitations or the victims, it's important that they get some type of justice as well. And I think in this scenario, it's a bit of a deterrent, but not a very big one.
Josh Schiffer, these victim funds, when they're set up and victims can come forward and get a piece of it, does that provide a sense of justice for these women who have been victimized in such an awful, awful way?
Case by case, some of them have been good. This one does not appear to be so. These victim funds provide a limited amount of justice for the people who wish to remain quiet and silent and just bury them. But it absolutely prevents the really heavily victimized, the traumatized people who need and deserve public healing. It stops them from going through the door and really reaching out for justice. Harvey Weinstein's not paying a penny. This is an insurance policy that was taken out as part of their annual operating expenses, and now it's a liability that's been extinguished. And an accountant somewhere at an insurance company is now going to present at next year's insurance company seminar about, hey, your corporate liability, just take a look at this. We successfully used a victims' compensation fund to drive down the potential value by limiting the top end. And, we did a good job. But that's not justice, Vinny. That's just not justice.
Monica, do you think anything changes in Hollywood as a result of the entire Harvey Weinstein saga?
No, I think the only thing that'll change is people get around to covering it up better, quite honestly, because even though there's a lot of strong women in Hollywood, there's a lot of strong men that are disgusting, and women also that are helping with this, and money talks, right? So I think they'll just get better at covering it up. But one thing I want to point out, Vinny, is what is the goal of these women? If the goal is to get it from Harvey Weinstein, meaning the money from Harvey, they're not going to get that. He's in jail. So what's their other goal? If their goal is to just say, look, company, you did this wrong, even if it's insurance money, and they want a little bit of money to be able to help with some counseling or to help with their trauma and to just move on and close that book, then this could be a fantastic settlement for them. Not every woman wants to get out there and tell their story and be traumatized again. They want a way to be able to close the book and move on. They won't be able to get, their individual revenge against Weinstein, but they know he's in prison and he's going to stay there hopefully until he dies. So this settlement could actually be a really good way for those women to heal and to move on. So I think that depending on the goal, victims funds like this can be really excellent because some women might not be able to get anything because there's no evidence whatsoever. But here in tier 1, they might be able to get something so that they can move on.
Before we go to break, I just want to point out, Josh Schiffer. Let's take a look at Josh Schiffer right now. I mean, this setup is just beautiful. It looks like you're getting ready to host Masterpiece Theater after you get off the air with us, Josh.
Well, I just got divorced like 2 months ago, so this is all of my furniture. And you're getting to view the intimate coolness that is a 1920s church with very limited furniture. So
excellent. All right, good stuff. All right, when we come back, we're going to switch gears, talk a little bit about Lori Vallow Daybell, her husband Charles. This weekend marks the 1-year anniversary of the death of Charles and really the beginning of the unraveling of everything that has happened in that case. We'll talk about it when we return.
And what is the emergency?
I shot my brother-in-law.
Okay, what part of his body is injured?
In the chest.
I'm sorry, where?
In the chest.
Okay, is he awake and responsive or unconscious?
Unconscious.
Okay, is he breathing?
I can't tell.
Are you willing to go over to him and check?
Sure.
Okay, do you just let me know if you see his chest going up and down? How old is he?
It's not moving. He's 60.
Okay, and are you wanting to start CPR?
No, I don't know how to do that.
I can walk you through it.
Okay.
That's the Iceman, Alex Cox, Lori Vallow's brother, on July 11th, 2019, 1 year ago. 1 year ago tomorrow. That was the day he shot and killed Charles Vallow, his brother-in-law, his sister's wife. And if you go back in time 6 months from then, right, you back it up 6 months, Charles Vallow seemed to know that something was wrong with his wife, Lori, and that she was becoming very dangerous and his life was in jeopardy. Ted Rollins takes a look.
Her religious stuff has gone way off the deep end.
That's Charles Vallow on January 31st, 2019, 6 months before he was shot and killed. He's outside a hotel in Gilbert, Arizona. He's called the police to help him confront his wife, Lori, who he thinks may be inside.
I want her to get help.
Yeah.
She's my wife. I love her to death. I just don't want her hurt.
Okay.
You know, I just don't want her hurt. I don't want her hurt anybody else.
Charles explains to the officers that the day before, Lori had taken $35,000 from their joint bank account and sabotaged his trip home from Texas.
Suspect she took my truck from the airport last night when I flew in. She canceled my flights. I had to buy another ticket, put the ticket back home.
Then he starts telling the officers the things Lori has been saying and what she believes.
She threatened me physically. She made threats about the kids. She doesn't care what happens to them. Come get them. I don't care. We won't hear that much longer anyway. And I've got my God powers. I can kill you if I want, anytime I want. It's just irrational stuff.
Yeah.
She needs some serious help. I want her to get help. I'm worried about her.
Charles tells the officers that Lori thinks she was married in a past life to Angel Maroney, the figure playing the trumpet on top of many LDS temples.
She thinks she's married to Moroni in the past.
You think she's what?
We're married to Moroni at the top of the temple.
Angel
Moroni.
LDS.
She knows when the second coming is happening next year.
He also explains that Lori believes his body has been taken over by a man named Nick Schneider. Charles is clearly alarmed by the things Lori has been telling him.
I've tried to support her as much as I could, but it's gotten really, really bad lately. She's had a break. She says, I'm Nick Schneider. I've taken over Charles's body. And Charles has been killed. I'm going to kill you. You're going to be murdered today or tomorrow. I can do it.
Then he tells the officers about his biggest concern, little JJ.
I've got a 6-year-old with special needs.
Right. And he's safe at school somewhere.
Right.
Okay.
For now. If she knows I'm here, she's going to go get it.
Lori ended up not being at the hotel. Less than a year after this body cam video was recorded, Charles and their children, JJ and Tylee, are all dead.
They scared the crap out of me.
And that's the frustrating part of all this, right? Because you go back a year, the children are alive, Tammy Daybell is alive, Charles Vallow is alive. If you go back 1 year ago today, and it just seemed that the writing was on the wall here. Let's bring back in our think tank. Monica Lindstrom, you're in Arizona, which is really where all of this starts. Was there anything from your perspective that could have been done here to prevent all the tragedies that followed based upon what Charles Vallow is saying and what Charles Vallow seems to know?
Well, if we Monday morning quarterback it, of course there's things that could have been done, right? Gilbert PD could have involuntarily committed her, although they did try to commit her in a way because she came in voluntarily and she didn't seem like there were any issues, and she checked herself into a place and she was checked out and she was fine and they let her leave. So there's probably always something that could be done, but I'm not sure what there was, because it's clear that Lori found a way to trick a lot of people into thinking that she was okay. What I find very scary, Vinny, is that all the people that have known what's going on, they just keep dying, right? So not only did her children die, not only did her ex-husband die, or well, I don't know, were they divorced then? They were in divorce proceedings, I think, when he was killed by her brother, and now her brother's dead, right? And then, of course, Daybell's wife is dead. So it's just everybody that knows anything has come up dead. And I think when we look back at this, there's not really any question, at least in my mind. I know that whole innocent until proven guilty thing, but I really don't think there's a question about what happened here. And if she tries to play the whole insanity card, good luck, because there's just things that are too methodical with what she did and what's happened. I'm sorry. I'm already saying she's guilty, but sorry, she's guilty.
Josh, when I look at this case, and Monica's so right, so many people have died. Charles Vallow can't testify about anything. But can videos like that perhaps be used in a courtroom, whether it's the case involving his death or the death of the children or somehow, some way? Because it seems like it's such powerful evidence, but he's not around to testify to any of this stuff.
You know, the admissibility would depend on the specific, style of the case. But what I really struggle with is the crime here isn't just committed by someone who I believe is pretty thoroughly mentally ill. I don't believe an insanity defense would work, but clearly not right, and making horrible, awful, evil decisions. Or at least that's the way it clearly appears. The crime is that the system failed so many different occasions. Time and time again, there should have been intervention from a community through its elected representatives, prosecutors, Department of Family and Children's Services. Someone should have gone out there and done more. And those leaders, they're the ones that need to be kept accountable.
You know, and Fallon, you look at this, and we know how this case became a national case when JJ and Tylee went missing, and there was this search, and now we know that they were killed. We know what happened to their remains. So I'm looking back, and I always look back in cases like this, you know, what could have been done here? You know, they're going through this contentious divorce proceeding. He's making allegations, but then he dies. And then it's like, all those allegations that he was making against her seem to disappear, and no one's picking up the pieces to say, well, maybe this isn't the right person to be guardian of these two angels.
Yeah, I agree. In this situation, Lori Vallow Daybell definitely was not in a position to raise these kids, and there were questions. Charles Daybell, Charles Vallow, he was making these allegations clear and stating that he had issues. It's all recorded and is seen, and then all of a sudden he ends up killed or ends up dead by her brother, and they're saying it's self-defense. So it's more to this story, and I think he was trying to paint it. Again, I agree that I think the system really failed these children and should have intervened at different points in time. And now you have two children that are dead because of basically their mother's involvement. It was months when she was questioned and asked about their whereabouts, refused to give any information, and never really even seemed concerned about where her kids were or if she wanted to tell anybody about their whereabouts. So this is a terrible case just to see, especially when you have two young children that have lost their lives to the likes of a parent.
All right, when we come back, it's time to hear from you, our 13th juror. The question, Ghislaine Maxwell, the confidant, the former girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein. She's locked up. Her attorneys filed papers. They want her out on bail. But her safety is a really big issue, right? Because she's got to be alive if we're going to find out more about this alleged conspiracy. Question to the 13th juror, is she safer in jail or out on bail? Your verdict when we return.
Today we announced charges against Ghislaine Maxwell for helping Jeffrey Epstein sexually exploit and abuse multiple minor girls from the period of 1994 through 1997. Maxwell was among Epstein's closest associates, and helped him exploit girls who were as young as 14 years old. We will be seeking detention, and we are sensitive to that concern, and certainly will be in dialogue with the Bureau of Prisons about it.
And her attorneys want her out. First of all, they say the charges are meritless, but they also want her out on bail. The question I posed for the 13th juror today was, is she safer in jail, in custody, or out on bail on her own? We begin with our comment of the day, and it comes from He Done. But I've got to read He Done's last name, too. He Done said what? Is the name of the viewer, apparently. Anyway, I'd like to think in jail, but we've all seen how that goes. She has a lot of information on very rich and powerful people. She won't make it to the trial either way. The only thing more certain than death and taxes is the corruption of the rich and the justice system. Josh Schiffer, let me ask you, do you think we will see a trial?
I really strongly feel some sort of deal is going to get made. She's smart. She's sophisticated. Look at her family. She knows what she was doing. She knows this day comes, and she's prepared. It's still going to be an ugly journey, but I strongly believe she has lots of information. She knows its value, and she, to some degree, is going to get a benefit from that. Doesn't mean she's going to ride off into the sunset by any means. I don't believe she's going to get bond. I believe that the judge is going to have a lot of reasons to deny bond until she gives the feds some of what they want. And that's what's going on in the background. Who knows how close the negotiations are or aren't? And if they can strike a deal, then maybe she gets out. Until then, they all want to know who's going after her.
Yeah.
Next comment from Abdon, who says, out. She'll be safer out. She can arrange her own security. Some did not want Epstein to talk, so the same will apply to this woman. Monica Lindstrom, if she gets out, do you think she needs personal security, or is that just part of a conspiracy theory that is being, talked about on the World Wide Web?
Oh my gosh, of course she's going to need security, because if we believe the story against Epstein and all the victims that are out there and the evidence, there were a lot of people involved, and there were a lot of very rich people involved, very powerful people. And if she knows those people, if she has the black book, of course they have the means and the motive to get rid of her. And if they've been able to hide their transgressions and their horrible, disgusting ways this long, they're going to figure out a way to hide that they've offed her or gotten rid of her. So absolutely she needs security. And it might be better to let her do it on her own, because if the feds are in charge of her security, well, some of the allegations are that some national politicians were involved in this, and maybe they'll find a way for the feds to look the other way. Whoops.
Lisa tonight writes, Ghislaine Maxwell is safer behind bars. For her own safety as well as the safety of the case, she needs to stay in jail. If she gets out on bond, there won't ever be a trial, period. Fallon Stokes, let me ask you, do you think she is safe in jail? I mean, Epstein died, right? And now there is a spotlight on Ghislaine Maxwell. Do you think she's safe behind bars?
Honestly, I don't think she is. I think when you see what happened to Jeffrey Epstein, he was in jail and then he died. Miraculously, they said suicide, but who knows under the circumstances. I think it was some other dealings or some wrongdoings going on with his death. But in this situation, if she is released, she definitely will have some type of ankle monitor. She will have to give up her passports. It's going to be an extremely high bail that she would have to post or pay. But I think it would be so important if she's out, if they want to make a deal with her and see what information she could provide. Her safety is so critical in this situation. And I think her protection would be better suited, or she would be better protected if she was released on bail.
Colin, tonight, maybe there's still room on the International Space Station. That's about the only place where she'd be somewhat safe, given the powerful folks who want all record of their sordid past to die with Jeffrey Epstein. I wouldn't want to be in her shoes. Josh Schiffer, we only have about 20 seconds here, but from 1 to 10, 10 being the most danger, how much danger do you think she would actually be in?
I think she's at an 8 or 9. She's got a legit reason to be afraid. She knows bad stuff about being.
Josh Schiffer, Fallon Stokes, Monica Lindstrom, always great to have you three on the program. Really do appreciate you coming in on a Friday night. Thanks so much, and stay safe out there.
Thank you, Vinny.
Thanks so much, Vinny.